You are tuned into the Dr. Tyna Show with Dr. Tyna Moore. For more, visit drtyna.com. On this episode of the Dr. Tyna Show, I'm going to be taking you behind the scenes of a personal health crisis I just had, I'm going through, and I'm going to tell you how I treated it. I herniated a disc in my back a few days ago, and I'm going to tell you all about it. I'm going to teach you a ton of golden pearls on what to do and what not to do if you experience something like this yourself, which many, many people will. I'm hopefully going to dispel some fear that many people have about this. And I'm going to tell you what steps exactly I did to get from a 10 out of 10 pain on Tuesday, where I was so blinded by pain, I couldn't see straight and I could not figure out what to do. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything. I was on the floor crying, defeated, to now it is Friday. And as of this morning, I am down at least 90%, 85, 90% of my pain. And all my neurologic symptoms are gone. So I'm going to tell you exactly what I did. So let's jump in. All right. So what happened? I'm just going to break this down. I don't have anything scripted. I just want to share with you guys exactly what went down. So my back has been fusing over the past few years, and it really came to a head in 2021, 2022. I have psoriatic arthritis, and ankylosing spondylitis is sort of a subsect of that in some of us. And as it was happening, I knew it was happening, and it was incredibly painful. And my back, basically, my low back just basically glued up. And I've always had some mobility in there, and I was able to sort of cavitate my spine when needed and get things mobile because I stay strong. I do all the things. And I knew my back was gluing together because I've taken care of patients with this, and I knew exactly what was happening. It took me a minute. I couldn't really find any chiropractors to help me sort it out. I couldn't really find any naturopathic doctors to help me sort it out because the naturopathic doctors didn't quite understand the musculoskeletal stuff as well as I was hoping for, and the chiropractors didn't really understand the systemic stuff as well as I needed. Not to say that the people who helped me weren't brilliant at what they did. I really needed my brain, except my brain was under siege because that's another symptom of psoriatic arthritis. It makes you have tremendous brain fog and fatigue. And I was in the throes of pushing back against the narrative at the time. And so I was under attack. I was being politically targeted. I was getting death threats from the terrorist organization that runs Portland. I'm not going to say any names. My husband took almost a year off work to follow me everywhere and stay with me all the time because I was so worried about my safety, my personal safety, for pushing back. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. It was not a fun time. And my immune system was really in overdrive, and it was getting really bad. So I have been spending the past few years unwinding that. And GLP-1s have helped me tremendously in this adventure, if you will. I don't want to say battle because I never want to battle my body. Autoimmune disease, we have to find coherence with it. We have to, in some ways, accept a new norm, but also really just figure out what can we do, right? I'm always about what can I do? And so I was just having wonderful breakthroughs. I've been doing Pilates religiously since November. I found a great studio just outside of my little town, in the next little town over, a really wonderful woman there who has a beautiful studio. And she's so great. And I do Pilates. Almost everyone I think everyone in there is older than me, and they're just so strong, like women in their 60s and 70s, and I believe even 80s. And I have been making gains, and it was really hard at first because my spine was so difficult. I'll back up a little bit. I had been having some symptoms coming and going that was stemming from my lower thoracic, upper lumbar spine. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I kept having these little snafus. And by snafus, I would all of a sudden get like a twinge, and then I'd be on the couch for 3 days with a heating pad with pretty decent pain. And I'm like, well, that is shockingly painful. And I've had a lot of injuries, guys, like a lot. And I've had herniated discs. And this was like shockingly painful, but it would come and go. And it would almost go as quickly as it came. So I kept thinking, oh, I have a rib out or something else. And then I was getting this blanket of weird paresthesias, which are like kind of neurologic dermatomal patterns of pain, and just this sclerotogenous pain too, that is really like kind of dull and achy, but then there'd be like kind of a sharper version of it coming and going on both outer thighs and down into my groin and down into my, like my buttocks, coming back and around my buttocks to my anterior and lateral thighs and into my groin. And I'm like, well, that means something's coming from the center. That's central. Something's going on. And about a year ago, I figured out, I think I am having disc degeneration at around T12L1. And I remember telling my husband, like, I think that horrific bout of pain I went through wasn't just spinal fusion issues. I think I was having degenerative disc disease happen. And the thing about degenerative disc disease is that while it's happening, it's really, really painful. But once it's done, and your disc is kind of black and dead, the pain can very much subside or kind of come and go. And I thought, I bet that's what happened, but I'm not keen on getting into an imaging machine. Like, I'm not big on getting MRIs. I don't feel like I need to get hit with massive doses of magnets. I don't feel like having any gadolinium injected into my bloodstream so that they can have contrast dye to look at things. I didn't feel like having my disc tinkered with or injected or even treated for that matter, because I was doing pretty good. I was losing muscle mass though in my glutes, and you've probably heard me talk about how I lost my butt. I couldn't get it back. I can't get it back. It's just not nearly what it was. I mean, in 2019, I had a muscular booty, and now I don't. It's fine. I mean, for a 50-year-old woman, it's pretty nice, but it's good enough, but it gets me around. But it's just, I knew there was neurologic inhibition going to those muscles. And so anyway, my own self-diagnosis was probably some degenerative disc disease at that level. And that doesn't mean that you lose the nucleus pulposa, which is the inner goo of the disc entirely, but it's a waning disc. They can be brought back to life. I've seen discs get injected with PRP and stem cells and they come back, which is really cool. But I was like, I don't know, we're going to wait and see how this goes. Something I was not able to do is bring back kettlebell swings, which I'm so sad about because they just really created too much pain for me. And then it would kind of go side to side, like this side would be an issue and that side would be an issue. And more recently, I was having a phenomenal transition in my spinal health and things were really opening up and I was getting a lot of movement and mobility. Things were popping and loosening up. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I was telling my husband, I was really working on lateral movement and my Pilates instructor was helping me. And I was really finding like new depths of movement in my rib cage and movement in my spine, and everything was going great. And then I remember telling my husband about a week ago, I would say, I was like, I'm feeling really unstable in that region, that T12L1. It's feeling really unstable. Like I would lean forward and I'd feel like, ooh, not pain, but like, is it going to get me back up? And little twinges here and there that were maybe a little bit sharp. And I was like, it's talking to me. So I wasn't really sure, but never in a million years did I think I would experience what I just went through. I just thought it was going to like get caught or something, And so I just kept doing what I was doing. On Monday, I went to Pilates. It was a really great session. It was hard. We were sweating. I was doing some mountain climbers. I will say I don't love mountain climbers for my back. I never have, but usually it upsets my SI joints, not my mid back. T12 is right where your thoracic spine ends, and L1 is where your lumbar spine begins. That is a really shitty area to have issues. It's extremely painful. It's like right below your bra strap if you're a woman. Really terrible place to have issues and a really terrible place to herniate a disc because it can be very dangerous. There's not a lot of room there for a disc to push out into, not like in the lumbar spine. And so you can have a lot of problems. Like you can lose bladder and bowel function. You can become paralyzed from the waist down. Like you can have all kinds of problems. It could be a very emergent surgery. Who knows? But anyway, Monday did Pilates. Monday night, I kid you not, I leaned over. Classic. This is the classic disc herniation move. You lean down and you laterally twist to pick something up. So like think of someone vacuuming. That movement, I leaned down to pick up a doormat that my puppy had pooped on. And he didn't mean to. He's potty trained now, but he lost his bowels because he had, I switched his food on him too abruptly, or he had a snack or something he shouldn't have eaten. And he just had some, bad poop. And I went to pick up the mat. I reached out forward, kind of twisted, and bam, I felt it. Only it was this side, which had not traditionally been the side that bothered me. And I was like, oh, smack. It was like someone shot me in the back with a dart. I mean, it was that intense. And I was like, wow, that's shocking. It wasn't like a rib out. I've had ribs out. This was shocking and sharp and very high pitched pain. And I was in so much pain. I immediately was like, I got to keep moving. I thought I had a muscle tweak. So I'm trying to stretch it out. I'm tractioning. I'm downstairs. I've got a full Pilates reformer and I've got a lot of Pilates equipment actually. And I'm down in my basement on my Pilates equipment. And I went into loaded flexion. That was a terrible idea when you have a disc issue because all that does is squish it further out the back. And there was a moment where it felt like someone shot me in the back with a handgun. Not that I ever have been, but it felt really awful. And I immediately knew what happened. I was like, oh no. And then I was in a 10 out of 10 pain immediately. I pretty much crawled up the staircase, trying not to cry. I don't cry when I have physical pain. I cry when I get angry. That's when I cry. But I was trying not to cry, which is unlike me. Like for me to cry from pain is not me. And I'm face down on the floor upstairs. I finally get upstairs and my husband's like, are you okay? And I'm like, don't touch me. I don't know what position to get into. I don't know what to do. I can't breathe. I can't move. I can't think straight. And I finally got myself on my side. I'm going to teach you right now what to do. If you ever find yourself with a really bad back injury, no matter where it is, I don't want you trying to lay on your back and then hop up into like a sit-up position because all you'll do is put more pressure on that posterior region and shove the disc out further or aggravate if you engage your abs too hard or your hip flexors, if it's just a muscle tweak you've got back there, it's still going to be really painful. So what you do is you roll on your side, you curl up into fetal position, and then you take your hands and you gingerly push yourself up into a seated position, but your knees you're still sideways. And then from there, you get up onto hands and knees and then you get up. That's how you get up and down when you've been injured. You don't lay on your back and like try to do a sit up. That will not only be terribly painful, but it could worsen the disc protrusion. So roll on your side. If there's nothing else you take from this entire episode, roll on your side when you have a back injury. Gingerly push yourself up on your hands. If you're on YouTube right now, you're kind of seeing me do it with my hands. Come over to YouTube and watch. And then I'm seated sideways with my knees on the ground still. So they're like, I look like a mermaid, if you will. And then I get up from there. You want to try to keep your back as flat as possible. You don't want to be curling or extending your back when you've hurt it really badly until you know what's going on. I'm going to get to the extension part in a minute. Okay. So that was Monday night. And I was like, I royally fucked myself up. And I got to get on a plane on Saturday for the trip of a lifetime. Have never been to London. So excited. No expense was spared. And I just herniated my disc worse on my own accord. I was like, good job, Tyna. And I immediately had this like rush of memory come back from chiropractic college. Our training there was really spectacular. And I immediately, in my head in medical school, I was going through 2 programs concurrently. And so I had to categorize things into bad or manageable. Like, is this something I can manage or is this bad? And then there's like really bad, like pancreatitis is really bad. Don't even try to manage it, Tyna. Send them to the ER, right? A disc herniation in the lower thoracic, upper lumbars is really bad. That's in the really bad category. Like you really could have an emergent spinal surgery necessity because you wake up and like you can't feel your legs or you can't move them. I mean, not kidding. I'm not exaggerating. It's just the nature of how the space is up there and how much disc it can handle or not handle. There's not a lot of space in that region. And the way your thoracic spine is it's like plate on plate on plate, the way the facets lie. And your lumbar spine is like this. It's side to side. And so that's a transition zone. And transition zones where your spine goes from your cervical spine to your thoracic is tricky. That's why a lot of people have issues there. But from your thoracic to your lumbar spine is real tricky. And what I think happened was, of all those years that my spine was losing mobility, it was moving its way up. It started in the SI joints and it was moving its way up. And I think that T12L1 was where there was still mobility. So I think it took the brunt of the mobility for years because the rest of the spine below it was not moving very well. And I think that's actually what probably sent this over the edge. I think too many shearing forces. And because it's a transition zone, it's shaped weirdly and it doesn't have great integrity. It's just not built as well as the segments above and the segments below. So that's why L5S1 down at the bottom is also a transition zone. And you get a lot of issues there too. And that's the most common disc herniation in the low back, right? Is because of that transition zone. It's just not built to withstand as much as the segments above and below. So I think it's been a long time coming. I was in so much pain I couldn't see straight. I took some ibuprofen. Ibuprofen inhibits healing, so I'm not keen on that, but I didn't know what to do. So I took 600 milligrams of ibuprofen twice that day, which I am not a fan of, you guys. I never go above 2, maybe 400. The tablets come in 200 milligrams. I don't go above 2 to 400 in a whole day. I am not a fan of high dosing ibuprofen. Many doctors are. Some doctors will tell you to take up to 1,600 milligrams a day. I think that's just bonkers because you completely shut off healing. And then you shoot yourself in the foot for collagen deposition up to 300 days later, just by high dosing ibuprofen early on in any injury. So not a fan of that. Didn't want to ice it because I didn't want to put anything on it. The ice was too hot. I knew my neurologic system was messed up because cold felt hot. And the only thing that made it feel better was heat, but I couldn't find a comfortable position the whole day. It was a terrible day. I went to bed that night, took a little bit of prednisone, only 5 milligrams, very low dose, just to kind of take the edge off, took more ibuprofen, went to bed, took a muscle relaxant actually, went to bed, woke up in the middle of the night in torturous pain. And I started praying. I was crying. I was praying. My dog, unfortunately, had diarrhea all over our Persian rug. So I am in a 10 out of 10 pain with a back brace on my hands and knees, cleaning up puppy diarrhea. He's so worried about me because I'm clearly a mess. And I started praying and I was like, God, please guide me. Like, tell me what to do. I have to get on this plane on Saturday. And I got a very clear hit. You herniated your disc, Tyna, but you know what to do. And I was like, damn straight, I know what to do. This is what I did for over a decade in clinical care. Like, I took care of people and helped them get back on their feet. And so I immediately felt empowered. I was like, I know what to do. This wasn't some random aberrant muscle spasm I had no control over. I knew what to do. I got this, right? And I was like, okay, game on. I woke up. I got myself back to sleep. I woke up the next morning. I immediately went downstairs. I am super stocked up with medication since the pandemic because I stocked up early because I was like, I'm not dealing with, I knew how that whole thing was going to play out. I did not think it would get as ridiculous as it did, but I knew it was going to be pretty ridiculous. So I stocked up early. So I got all the steroids. Like, I made sure I had a couple of different each ones, right? So I got a Medrol dose pack, which is where it like high doses you and then you go each day less and less and less. I took 2 of those as directed on the dose pack. And within 20 minutes, I was like, oh, I can breathe again. I can like think, I can breathe. The pain became something much more tolerable. And as soon as the pain resolved a bit, I was like, oh my gosh, I was in more pain, you guys, on Tuesday than I was when I was in labor. And I had my labor induced. I went for 20 hours without an epidural on Pitocin induced labor. And they wouldn't give me an epidural. That's a horror story for another day, but that was hell. And I've heard women who have had that experience and then had non-induced births. Well, I guess that is natural, right? Non-induced vaginal births tell me that the Pitocin-induced labor was like getting hit by a train, so much worse. And it was truly like getting hit by a train. This was like up there with that pain level. It was pretty awful. And I got out of it on Wednesday morning. I'm on the steroid and I'm thinking straight. And I was like, okay, game on. So here's what I did. I was not opposed to taking the steroid. Many people would say, and I used to erroneously believe this, that if you take a steroid, you're going to inhibit the immune system and that's going to inhibit healing ultimately. And it could actually make the region more unstable. There is some truth to that. But my mentor always taught me, if you're going to do opioids or you're going to do steroids, either or, not that they're the same, totally different mechanisms, either or though, you hit it high and hard and you get off them as soon as possible. It's the prolonged use of these things that really starts to deteriorate your tissues when it comes to steroids, right? So I was like, okay. And then I actually went into research mode because that soothes my soul somehow. And I'm laying on my back on the heating pad, researching on my phone. And I find that Medrol in particular actually has some really cool neuroprotective properties. Here's what happens when you herniate a disc. The nucleus pulposa comes out of the annulus, which is the rough fibrous outer coating of the disc that has somehow failed. And the nucleus pulposa bulges out and the immune system goes, what is that? It's not supposed to be out here. And so the immune system attacks, and it's that chemical warfare that really causes all the pain and destruction. It causes a lot of secondary damage. It's kind of like sending the Marines in just to blast. A lot of damage happens. It's not as elegant as maybe the Navy SEALs, right? So I'm not dissing Marines, by the way. I'm just talking about their strategies as I know them. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but that's how I understand it. So it's that secondary chemical fallout from your immune system getting really pissed off and going in full bore. And so we want to turn that off. And now I don't want to take a bunch of NSAIDs to shut off the inflammatory pathways, but I definitely found some good evidence that this Medrol was going to be a very helpful, potentially, agent in my healing. And I'm okay with that. Like, there was the cost benefit ratio worked out for me. So I continued on the Medrol pack. I was like, all right, what else am I going to do? BPC 157, TB 500, it's TB4 frag. I will put links to both of those. They're oral, they're capsules. You can get them over the counter. It's legal. It's from a company that I trust and I like. And it's sold as a supplement. This is all legal. Integrated peptides. I will give you guys the link in the show notes so that you can go through and check it out and buy your own. That comes in a spray if you want to do sublingual, or you can do the pill form. So I'm not going to tell you how I dosed, because I dosed way above what I would dose a normal human, because I was like, I don't care. I don't care if I get any side effects from this, because I am in so much pain and I need to heal very quickly. So I went on like Wolverine mode and needed to regenerate. So I really, really hit it hard. I also, what else did I do? I immediately got off the ibuprofen because I'm not a fan of that. High dose curcumin, high dose fish oil. Again, I'm not going to tell you how I dosed because it was ridiculously high. And I would never dose somebody like that unless they were my patient and I was actually monitoring them. So I took copious amounts of all the things. I also made sure that I keep HCG on hand, which is an injectable, and that's a prescription only item. And I have literature going back to that I've known about that goes back to the early 1980s, where they actually severed rats' spinal cords and gave them HCG, and it regenerated their spinal cord. And why we don't know about this at large, I don't know, but I've used HCG clinically for pain and for neurologic conditions, like, musculoskeletal neurologic conditions, for years and years in practice with good success. I've used it personally. So high dose of HCG going in me every day. Again, I'm not going to tell you how I'm dosing it because it's crazy for the average Joe. And I don't want to get into medical advice. I'm just telling you what I'm taking. I also had muscle relaxants on board as needed. I didn't want to take those though, because I didn't want to mess up my back worse. I didn't want to take all the pain away. The steroid was taking enough pain away for me to even be concerned that I might be careless in my movement. I really don't want to herniate that any worse, because Lord knows it's in a bad place. Like I said, it's in a very dangerous spot. So I did not want to add to that. The only time I took muscle relaxants was at night when I was sleeping. I knew I was going to be, hopefully, you still can mess yourself up in your sleep, but I just didn't want to be all out of sorts. I wanted everything firing appropriately and me being aware. So if I were to wake up with pain, that was a little more preferential than me drugging myself into oblivion and sleeping through it and, accidentally twisting wrong in bed or whatnot. Didn't want to take them during the day. What else did I take? I think that's about it. Oh no, I know what I took. Energy Bits. I did a whole podcast with Catherine from Energy Bits. You guys can go listen to that. Chlorella and spirulina. I just took a bunch of it just to nutritionally feed myself. If I had access, which I didn't because I couldn't even get in a car, I should have been cranking bone broth. Normally I would be drinking a ton of bone broth and I would have just bought it in the boxes, but I didn't. I don't know. I've been so busy trying to get ready for London and get everything set up before I leave on this trip, and the pain, I just never got around to the bone broth, but I would have used bone broth. Definitely used protein powder, definitely cranked up the collagen. I think that's about it for the big stuff. There may have been a couple little things here and there, but hitting my nutrition, making sure I'm eating enough protein, my appetite immediately went away. GLP-1s actually are neuroprotective. They decrease neuroinflammation. I've talked about that on multiple podcasts and on my 4-part video series that you guys can link to in the show notes and get more education around that. But I took another injection of that, which is a little bit more than I would normally take. I just really wanted to have that on board to help me. So it did kind of kill my appetite a little bit there too. And my appetite was already crushed from the pain. So I've just been kind of force feeding myself, but I knew yesterday I was better because my appetite was starting to return. So anyway, all that said, I was doing all of it and that's awesome. But here's what's more important. This is the most important part. The millisecond I got mobility back because the pain went down, I immediately started moving. Like, I haven't sat still. I take concerted strategic breaks on the hot pad, But then the minute my pain is down and I'm warmed up, I get up and I start moving. So I'm talking laps around the farm. The first couple days, all I could do was like walk out the front door and walk back. And I've got a back brace on. So I've got a brace that you can get something very inexpensive off of Amazon. And I just make sure that my lumbar spine is very supported. This one has copper in it, and it's maybe hoping to be a little more anti-inflammatory. But the brace really helped me engage my abs so that I was able to walk, because I couldn't even walk. It was so painful. I was all twisted up. I was in so much pain. That's when I knew it was really a herniation, was when I was involuntarily twisted. I was like, oh, that's a pretty bad sign. I've seen that with patients where they're just all twisted and they can't untwist because everything's seizing because of the inflammation and the pain. So lots of walks, 2 tolerance. I had a cane. I literally hobbled around like an old lady. I kept my German Shepherd close because I had to keep sort of stabilizing on him. And he was very gracious to me about that. He knew I was not okay. And I did not stop walking, because your spine is really a hydraulic system. And we need that undulation of the stepping and the cross crawl patterning to keep that hydraulic system and that tensegrity moving again, right? And being healthy and all the other parts supporting. And so walking is your best friend as much as you can walk. Most doctors will tell you to lay down on a heating pad and stay there. I'm telling you, do not stop moving, because the more you lay there, the more things seize up and the more decondition they get and the more atrophy that happens. The minute something gets neurologically damaged or injured, the muscles immediately start atrophying very quickly. It's shocking when you look at imaging studies of this. I mean, they just atrophy away to nothing because they're neurologically inhibited. So I was like, oh, heck no, that's not happening to me. I'm getting on this plane Saturday. And not only am I getting to London because I have a big podcast I'm about to be on, I'm going to enjoy London. I'm walking, like I'm ready. I got the shoes, I got the clothes, I got the tour figured out of the sites I want to see. Like I'm walking London. I was ready to have a full week of just walking London with my hot husband and having fun. And so I'm like, no, I'm doing this. By yesterday, Thursday, I'm recording on Friday. By Thursday, I was down. I remember waking up Thursday morning and I'm like, I feel human again. Like I'm still in a lot of pain, but I feel like a human being and my brain is working. Okay, this is better. I'm on steroids. I'm on day 2 of the steroid pack and I'm feeling better. So because of that, I bring in more movement. So now I'm using my Pilates equipment. You can actually do exercises on the floor if you're able to get up and down off the floor. But I was using the couch. I was using chairs. I was using the kitchen counter. I was doing everything I could to traction my spine and to strengthen however I could, whatever movement I could do. Dr. Stuart McGill, like the back mechanic book. If you guys don't have it, I'll link it in the show notes. You guys all should have that book. He has the big 3 exercises. So I immediately started with the big 3 exercises yesterday. I have a Pilates chair and a Pilates reformer. So I'm able to use the spring action to give myself some resistance so that I'm able to move in and out of some flexion and extension very gently, very, very gently. But I was moving as best I could. I also have a giant bathtub. Maybe one of the reasons I fell in love with him initially, because he's got a big bathtub, because he's a tall dude. And he made sure when he built this house that he put in a bathtub that he could lay down in. So for me, it's like a swimming pool almost. And I feel like a mermaid in there. It's not a swimming pool, but it's quite large and long. I couldn't get out of the bath Tuesday. I could not do it Wednesday. I was so crippled. By Wednesday night, I was able to get into the bathtub. And then Thursday night, last night, I took another bath. So long baths, tons of Epsom salts, lots of movement in there to tolerance, but careful, right? I don't want to herniate that disc worse. I don't want to piss anything off and re-spasm the muscles. So lots and lots of movement yesterday through my spine, which most people will be like, I can't believe you moved your spine. Weren't you afraid? And I was like, well, you know what? It's either that or it's going to have neurologic inhibition and atrophy, which is going to make the disc herniate worse when I go to pick up something in however many weeks from now when I think I'm over it. So no, I'm not scared. I'm going to work with the pain. I'm going to listen to the pain and I'm going to move. I'm going to do the McGill Big 3. I'll put a link in. I don't know if you guys know Squat University on Instagram and YouTube. Great, great PT doctor. His name is evading my brain right now because I have been in so much pain. I think the steroids are shooting my brain too, but he is brilliant and he goes through and actually shows you the exercises. So I'll link that in for you so you can see them. But get Dr. Stuart McGill's Back Mechanic book where you can read about it and learn about it. There's 3 exercises in there that are critical for spinal stabilization. You stabilize the front side, the back side, and the sides. I was not able to do the third exercise, which is a lateral plank, side plank. I could not engage at all. It was just painful. It was sharp and painful. And what I did notice yesterday is something that's very important is we call it centralization. When you initially get hurt, the region, everything hurts, right? Like Tuesday from my neck to my buttocks, half of it felt like fire. The other half felt like ice. I felt like the Game of Thrones dragons were having a war inside my spine. It was so bad. It's like a deep, deep toothache, right? With shooting pains every time you move or like cough or pee or try to have a bowel movement. It's excruciating. And I have been getting a little bit of neurologic symptoms. I will get to that. I want to make sure to dispel some of your fear really well and teach you a few things there. So I'll make sure to hit that. But I did what I could do to tolerance, listening to my pain and making sure that I kept mobility strong. And I moved through the pain and I would heat myself up as needed, lay down. I also took as many naps as I needed. People don't realize how exhausting pain is. As someone who's lived with chronic pain, I do know, but that acute pain, that really severe acute pain, man, it is tiring. So I took several little naps as needed throughout the day, every single day. I've been going to bed early. I usually have to get up in the middle of the night and come out to the heating pad, and I'd make sure I go back to sleep out there. Earplugs, eye mask. I'm not messing around with my sleep, using melatonin as a sleep aid at night. Really just making sure that I rest my body as needed, that I feed my body as well as I can to tolerance of my appetite. Bladder and bowel movements were okay. Some constipation, not trying to give you guys TMI, but I just want you to know what's normal. Like my bowels didn't want to move. And I don't know if it's because of the region where it is, or if it's just the steroids, or if it's just the sheer pain and my body's protecting me. So not great bowel movements, but hey, I'm going now. Everything's fine. So sorry if that's too much TMI, but medically speaking, I want you all to know this because I don't want you to be scared, because that's the thing. When you get hurt, especially like this, if I didn't know what was going on, I would have been terrified. I would have been absolutely terrified. I wouldn't have known what to do. I would have been in an MRI machine very quickly, likely with contrast dye in my veins, which is a heavy metal that's toxic to your brain and your nerves. I would have been put into the system. And that system, for someone at my age and middle age, is just, you end up in surgery. You end up with cortisone in your back, which is going to completely break down your tissue and make you more unstable. And you end up with radial ablation, where they ablate the nerve so you can't feel it, or you end up in surgery. And I just did not want to go down that path. I decided mentally on Tuesday night, when I had the clue that I was like, oh yeah, you herniated a disc, like accept it. And then figure out what you're going to do about it. And I decided then I'm not having surgery. This is not going to herniate further, and I'm going to get over this. I trained for this. This is why I tell you guys, strength training is non-negotiable. There is no way. So today, right now, my pain is down by 85, 90% from where I was on Tuesday. And the only reason for that is because I came into it prepared. I took care of a lot of women and men in my age cohort. I was in my 30s and 40s when I was taking care of these patients, but most of them were complete disasters of health. And your tissues quite literally start melting off of you in middle age if you haven't been taking good care of them. If you've not been nutritionally dense, if you've been smoking, drinking a lot, not working out, you're just literally one bad step away from everything just ripping apart. I'm not exaggerating. I would put my hands on these women, especially because now their hormones are dumping out. So they're losing all their hormones concurrently. They very, very rarely had good muscle mass, right? And they would come in and say, well, can't you fix my knee, or can't you fix my shoulder, or can't you fix my back? And I'm like, your tissues are melting off of your body. There's so much more we need to do here besides just injecting the tissues, right? It's not going to hold. It's like trying to put out a fire with a fire extinguisher while somebody's continuing to pour lighter fluid and burn down the house, right? And so it's just not a great idea. Plus, if everything's inflamed and hormonally unoptimized and deconditioned, and there's your muscles get fatty infiltrate when you have metabolic dysfunction, and they get fatty infiltrate when they're not being used. The spinal muscles, the little tiny stabilizers of the spine, get fatty. They literally get fatty infiltrate in them, and they atrophy. So most people are walking around with these really fatty, weak spinal muscles. That's not even accounting for the core muscles and the corset, the muscles that pull you together from the top through the diaphragm, through the abdominal corset muscles down into the pelvic bowl and those pelvic floor muscles, those are so weak and blown out in most people that they have no control over their core. And I was like, no, I've been doing a ton of Pilates. I've been strength training for years. I got this. And I used to do a ton of Pilates. I had taken some years off and I've come back to it. So I had the muscle memory. So like I have literally for over a decade been training to handle this. And I was determined to get through it. And I knew I would because I came into it so fit. And that was the number one thing. I eat well. I get enough protein. I take good care of myself. But more importantly, I came into it fit. And this is why we train. Hear me right now. If you have been one of those people, I get messages from you all the time. You know who you are. Dr. Tyna, I'm on GLP-1s. Or Dr. Tyna, I'm doing all the things you tell me and I've lost so much weight. Or Dr. Tyna, I switched all my diet up and I got off of the Dr. Pepper and I'm eating more protein and it's been miraculous. And then the next thing everyone says to me, and you've heard me bitch about this before, but I haven't started strength training yet. And I'm like, what? That's the first thing you're supposed to do. That's literally step one. I don't care if you're eating like complete garbage and you're drinking all the Diet Coke in the world. Start with strength training. Everything else will improve itself. I promise. You have to strength train. You middle-aged ladies and you men, you have to strength train. Like men, especially like my husband, blue collar guy, right? He's very physical with his work, but I've seen so many guys in that construction world zone where they're like, I work with my body every day. I don't need to work out. I'm like, you are literally one twisting and bending move away from a disc herniation. And here I am experiencing it myself. And I'll tell you why. I've had a series of unfortunate events the past few years when it came to musculoskeletal orthopedic injuries. And it's because my estrogen dumped out quickly. It all happened around the same time, 2021. I started going into perimenopause pretty aggressively due to the stress. The stress exacerbated it. COVID exacerbated it. And then I ended up in that sort of like low hormone state. And I've been pulling myself out of the pit ever since. So I do supplement. I don't even know why I went off hormones for a couple of years, which is a totally stupid idea. But anyway, I'm back on everything. I feel much, much better for it. I look better when people are like, oh, you look great. Is it your hair? And I'm like, yes. And I went back on hormones and I'm taking a little bit of GLP-1, which is doing awesome things for my immune system. So I had everything on board and I was prepared. I'm not bragging. I'm telling you this as a warning. Please, you guys, I've taken care of so many patients exactly like me who weren't prepared. They didn't come into it well-fed, well-trained, and prepared. And it was a disaster. I guarantee if this had happened to me and I was not in the shape I'm in and I was not eating well and I was not living the way I'm living, this would have been a surgical emergency. I know it. It would have been so much more severe, but my body held me together. And my tissues were strong and the ligaments supporting the posterior of my spine and anterior were strong. These become very compromised. The people who herniate discs are your smokers, your people who eat really crappy food, who are severely deconditioned. So their tissues are garbage because there's no good nutrition in them. And it's been going on this way often for decades. And then they're not trained at all. They're not in good shape. They're not conditioned. So they have no control over their spinal movements. Their spine is just like they're sort of flopping in the wind, you guys. These are the women that go to pick up something and like their whole shoulder goes into lockdown because frozen shoulder is a hormonal issue, but it's also a deconditioned issue. It's multifactorial, and I know that can feel overwhelming, but please just go back and start working your way through my podcast because I talk about all of this all the time. And if you go to my website at drtyna.com, and you click on the podcast button, there's all of my podcasts categorized. There's the hormone series. There's the strength training series. There's the GLP-1 series, or Ozempic, I call it on there because people don't know what GLP-1s are. There's an AI search feature that you can type in any word. It'll tell you all the episodes I did on you, wherever that word shows up. So I've talked about thyroid multiple times. That was a really important player here as well. So not having hormones on board is crazy to me when you're my age. Like, I don't understand why women don't take hormones. Makes zero sense to me. Like, if you're 50, you should be on bioidentical hormone replacement. Why would you not optimize yourself? Like, that's bonkers to me. And why would you not strength train? Like, you know that shit's going to get hard. These injuries are going to be coming for sure to all of us. And I mean, people get out of bed and cough wrong and blow out a disc. It happens, right? Even to the best of us. So you know this shit's coming. Be prepared when it comes. When injury and trauma come knocking, make sure that you're ready for it so that you bounce back, right? Like, I knew I was going to literally bounce back from this very quickly. And it was not going to be the devastation that I kept, because what's the first thing I do? I go look it up just to like jog my memory. And the stats are just abysmal when it comes to this kind of disc herniation. And surgery is not great because it makes the area more decompensated. So you're more prone to herniate, and you might need surgery because all these other horrible things I mentioned. And I was like, I'm not having any of that. I am not your average 50-year-old woman. I'm not having any of this. I'm not letting any of this in. I just quit looking. I was like, I'm going to go do whatever I need to do because I know what to do. I'm going to heal this shit up. So that is what I did. And it's Friday. I go to bed last night, Thursday night. I'm having a little bit of a panic attack. And I'm telling my husband, like, babe, I'm kind of freaked out. Like, I'm in so much pain. I can't imagine in, more than 24 hours from now being on a plane, crossing the ocean and being in this kind of pain. Like, I can't imagine what that's going to be like. And he's like, don't worry about it, babe. Just go to sleep. And I'm thinking in my head, like, I was like, I'm just going to pray. So I start praying. I was like, God, please let me wake up healed. I know it's asking a lot, but I have worked so hard to be healed and I've worked so hard to be healthy. Please let me wake up healed. I got this. I need to go on this trip. I need to make this appearance on this podcast. I need to go have fun. I need to go to London. I'm 50. Someday is now, right? I always keep saying someday I'll go. Someday is now. I bought the tickets. I got the nice hotel. I'm doing it. And we've been so excited. My husband and I, we've watched all the videos every night on YouTube about London and travel. And we're going to bring everything in a carry-on only. We're not checking any baggage. Like, we had this whole thing planned and I was so excited and he was so excited. I could tell. And I was like, I'm doing this. And I know when he's scared because he gets quiet, and he's been really quiet the last few days. So I'm praying. It kind of makes me cry because I was pretty freaked out. And I was like, do not let the fear in. Do not let the fear in. Just, you are going to wake up healed. And I woke up at 4 a.m. and I was in so much pain. And I was like, fuck, this is brutal. And I had to go out to the couch and get comfortable. And of course, Murphy's, my little puppy's been by my side this whole time. He's so cute. My Havanese, he's just glued to me. Everybody, all the dogs have been so great. They know something's wrong and they keep my spirits up. And Murphy's always right there, is like the other side of my heating pad, And I went back to sleep on the couch and I got up. And the other thing I've been doing is I've taught him how to hug me in a certain way where he tractions my mid spine. And so it's essentially, I think I'm going to put something on Instagram. You should go follow me on Instagram so you see it. But he hugs me. He hugs me in and up. That tractions the tissues out. And then he's tall. So he just leans back a little bit or stands up real tall. And then I let my legs go. So my feet are still touching, but I'm limp. And then I have a way that I can kind of just shimmy down my spine and traction it, because I have control over my spinal segmental muscles because I do Pilates. Like, I can traction my spine pretty well. And so I really just let that hanging motion. He's got me tight and I just let my back go. And it usually goes pop, 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 pop. And I've been having him do that for me every morning and every night for, I don't even know how many years, but I was not skipping a beat during these past few days. I made him do it as many times as I could get him to do it, usually 2-3 times a day. And it really has been helping, really, really. And that's when I knew, okay, I've got a disc herniation here, because traction's really helping. I also have rings hanging from a bar in my basement. So I hang and traction from that. My feet still touch the ground, but I can go limp. And then I've got a bar out in the garage where my feet are free hanging. That was a little ambitious for me because I was in so much pain. I didn't want to take my feet off the ground. I didn't want to free hang. It's called the closed chain, where both sides of the joint are touching something, basically. So like my hands and my feet are touching when I'm on the rings or when my husband's picking me up. But the free hang, I did do it a little bit yesterday, but it was a little bit too much. I needed to have my feet, even just my toes sort of hanging limp, touching the ground still gives you some neurologic input. So you have a bit more control over it. So don't just start hanging freely from tall structures, because you could really, if you hang too fast, if you do anything too fast when your muscles want to spasm in any joint, they will respond by spasming. So you're trying to stretch them out and they're like, whoa, it's too fast. And so they crank up. And I didn't want to have that happen because it was so excruciating whenever my back went into spasms. I also was hanging from the door jamb. Any door jamb that would support me in my house, every time I went through a door, I'd grab the top of it and just kind of limp down into it and let my feet were still touching the ground, but I'd let myself go limp. And I was thinking back to my mentor, Dr. Rick. You guys have heard me talk about him. He broke his back once. He was so crazy. He broke his back snowboarding in his late 40s, early 50s. think he was in his early 50s, like right at my age that I am right now, probably. And he broke his thoracic spine, like compression fracture, and he herniated a disc a little bit. And he was in so much pain. And I remember following him around the office, and he just didn't quit. He just kept treating, and he'd go from room to room to room, 4 rooms at once, just room to room to room. And between every room, he'd go hang in the door jamb. So I was like, I'm hanging in the door jamb every time I go through a door. Because I was up and I was walking, right? So that's also a pearl right there. Hang from the door jamb. Shoot, hang from the door jamb anyway, because we're all getting shorter from gravity and old age. So hang from the door jambs anytime you can. And that, that's good for your grip strength, which is an indicator of how long you're going to live. It's good for, lat strength. It's good for everything. So hanging from the door jamb. And then the other exercise that I was doing was controlled extension. So it's called McKenzie protocol. You can look it up. And what McKenzie protocol is if you, because of the nature of a posterior herniation, if you can, I can't really tell you how to do it over an audio or even the video, but go look it up. McKenzie has saved my butt. I've had an L5S1 herniation off one side. I've had an L4, L5 herniation off the other side. Not severe, minor, but painful. And then I've had this, and every time McKenzie has saved me. If you can get down on your hands and knees and you can do Cobra, but it's a Cobra with an extension. There's a trick to this. So find a video about it. It's a Cobra with an extension. You basically are tractioning and extending at the same time in various angles, depending on your pain. You want to move away from the pain, but there are various positions where you will find comfort. And that is where the disc will start to suck itself back in. So the key is to try to get the disc to suck itself back in. And so I've been doing a ton of McKenzie, and even standing. I found different ways, lying down in bed, lying on the couch, even just laying on my side, and finding ways to extend into a comfortable place and allowing that nucleus pulposa to start to pull back in. And this morning when my husband picked me up, I gave myself a little shimmy while I was hanging there. And I felt it. It happened. I felt the disc go back in. And I don't know how to describe it other than, well, first I heard a huge clunk. So clearly my vertebrae moved. But I also felt the pain pull away from the hot, lightning, intense, fiery pain that was zinging around God, it was doing a couple things. It was like zinging around my ribs. It was going down into my groin. It was definitely neurologic. And it went away. It went away like that. And I was like, oh, and I didn't want to say anything. I was like, I think you just fixed something. And he's like, okay, bye. I got to go to work. So he goes to work. And I kid you not, the whole next hour, I was like, my pain, I can't find it. I mean, it's there and my back's really sore and the muscle spasms are still really sore. It feels very bruised, but I mean, I feel like somebody hit me in the back with a baseball bat, to be honest with you, but it was like a minor version of that instead of like the 10 out of 10 version. It's like something happened, but it's over now, and it's just still pissed off down there, but not like, it's just healing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to jinx myself, but we are now sitting at like, I don't know, 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon and still fingers crossed, I am solid. So it worked. All of this to say it worked. All of the things I did worked. And I feel very confident in my ability to go through the airports tomorrow and get myself to London. We'll see. I'm still going to be sore. I'm still going to be traveling with a heating pad. I'm still going to make sure that I have my steroids on board. I'm going to taper off of them as indicated. I'm still going to be doing all the things, but the really acute emergent pain is now down. And I didn't think it was going to be by the time I recorded this. I was still going to record it and tell you what all I was doing, but I just kismet that it worked. And, God answered my prayer because I prayed for this. I was like, I need to be able to pack pain-free and I need to be able to get on that plane confidently and not scared. So anyway, that's awesome. A couple things before I leave you. When you herniate a disc, the world is not going to end. Okay. I know everybody leads you to believe it's going to end. I know the pain is blinding and it is intense and insane. My advice is get on a Medrol taper pack as soon as humanly possible. Go to your doctor and ask for a prescription. Now, a chiropractor is going to probably be able to help you to some degree manually, but when it's so spasm, they may not be able to do much. I've been using a TENS unit. That's been very, very helpful to me. I will totally tell you that. I'll make sure that I have it in my Amazon store and I'll give you the link to my Amazon store. The TENS unit has been on my back nonstop, and I've used it constantly. So I do believe in some kind of e-stim, and you can buy a TENS unit very inexpensively from Amazon or wherever, but your chiropractor is going to have some really cool tools too that is going to get your pain down. I highly encourage a visit to the chiro. I don't have a relationship set up with anybody here that I could quickly get into, so I didn't do that. I wish I had. So that's step one. But step two is get someone who can prescribe drugs to give you a Medrol taper pack, because it's going to save you from that nuclear fallout that is your immune system attacking the nucleus pulposa and causing all that neurologic damage. I firmly believe it will help. At the end of the day, you will be better off doing the Medrol taper pack. Plus, it brings your pain down. And we want movement, right? Like, we need to get the patient out of pain so that they can start moving. When the pain's everywhere, all at once, you can't see straight. You know you're getting better when it starts to centralize, where you can say, you know what, it's here and it's here. So it goes from being this big enigma of horrific pain. So a shoulder, for instance, you'll get pain. If you've ever really hurt your shoulder, you get pain up into your jaw, into your eye sometimes. It's all over. It's down in the back. It's in the rhomboids. It can be in the armpit. It can be down into the ribs. And then as soon as the patient's like, the pain's here, I'm like, oh, that's so much better. We're in such better shape. So yesterday, my pain started centralizing, and I was able to actually put the TENS unit where I needed it more specifically than this whole, like, I don't even know where the pain's driving. I knew what level the disc was at, but the TENS unit was even too intense, even at a low setting, to get anywhere near the disc. I couldn't touch my skin. I couldn't apply pressure. So when things start centralizing, Yahoo, use your TENS unit. Everybody should have a TENS unit in their house. The way it works basically is it turns off the pain gate. Your brain, so like injury happens, let's say in your hand, it travels up to your spinal cord. In your cord is a gate. That gate is either open or closed. This is like kind of a kindergarten version. It's not this simplistic, but it goes up to your brain. Your brain's actually registering the pain. Without the brain, your hand wouldn't feel the pain. If you touch something registering the hot, your brain is via your spinal cord. And TENS units basically shut the gate. So they allow you to continue through mobility and to continue moving, which is going to help you heal so much faster without feeling all the pain that you would otherwise. So everyone should have a TENS unit. I firmly believe it. I carry it in my pocket. I can do so much with my TENS unit. I love it. I have a little tiny one that I travel with. It's amazing. But I'll put a good one that's pretty user-friendly in my Amazon store. And then back to the Medrol pack, it gives you that ability to have mobility. And that mobility is what's going to save you ultimately. I firmly believe that. The sooner you can start moving and the sooner you can start getting range of motion back, the better off you're going to be. So don't be afraid. You might even be getting sharp shooting pain. You might be getting numbness, tingling, and weakness. I was getting both, but it wasn't severe. It was coming and going. So it was intermittent. So I was like, okay, this is manageable. What you are concerned about is motor loss. So all of you doctors listening, all you healthcare professionals listening, and the public listening, your disc herniation is not the kiss of death. I have taught this to countless doctors when I have lectured or trained them in different injection therapy modalities that I specialized in. And most did not know this. Chiropractors know this. Neurologists know this. Orthopedists probably know this. But most doctors think, oh, herniated disc needs surgery. Oh, numbness, tingling, and weakness, sharp shooting pains need surgery. No, you don't. When you do surgery, you are going to make the region more unstable. So your risk of herniation in the region is going to increase, and then the segments above and below are now going to become significantly more unstable. We have an old adage in orthopedic medicine: orthopedic surgery begets more orthopedic surgery. So sometimes you need your disc snipped off, and I understand that. But if you can get through this, especially with the use of some peptides that are going to regenerate you, I probably am going to be traveling to see a friend to get some PRP, some prolotherapy, maybe some stem cells or exosomes injected to the region to stabilize it once this heals up and calms down. There's all these things you can do. And I know when you're in the heat of it, it can be really, really concerning. But if you start having motor loss, meaning you might have a low-grade herniation and you're like, I'm fine. And then all of a sudden the patient comes in and one calf is much smaller than the other one. They're having atrophy because they're having motor loss. The motor signal to the muscle is not getting through. That is very concerning. Okay. Foot drop might be another one. Loss of bowel or bladder, or unable to hold or excrete. Any kind of motor loss is when you get very concerned. That's when we're looking at surgery. And absolutely 100% non-negotiable. We need to deal with that. But if there's no motor loss or atrophy or loss of muscle, like I even had my L5S1 disc really caused some transient, and I'm talking transient, like pretty long term gluteal atrophy. And I still deal with some low-grade gluteal atrophy. I mean, that's why I was so proud of myself for building a booty after all of that. I was like, I had all this atrophy due to discs, and then I grew my glutes, and then they went away again just more recently because of this damn region up here that's been barking at me for a few years. But if we don't have motor loss, we don't necessarily need surgery. Now, sometimes the pain is so bad and you try everything and you can't get out of it, and the disc has extruded and broken off, or it's really, really protruded in. It's so painful. It's not going to get sucked back in. Then maybe they need to go in and snip it off. And there's different surgical ways of doing that are less invasive. That I think that surgery is getting more and more elegant as the days go on. So just know there's options, but please do not let somebody talk you into it. If you can manage your pain with medication and it's working, and you're not, and I know this is a fine line. Some people are kind of really going to duke it out with the pain. I'm probably one of them. I'm stubborn. And then there's other people who are like, I can't handle this. I got to go back to work. I also will say I have the privilege of being an entrepreneur. I make my own schedule. I literally could just drop everything and not have to do anything. And, I'm still making money and everything's fine. So I understand I have that privilege and not everyone else does. So I'm not saying avoid surgery at all costs, but messing with the spine with surgery gets real messy real fast, and things seem to go from there. And I say this because doctors really are quick to surgery, and they will talk you into it very quickly, especially if you're a healthy, fit, middle-aged person. Orthopedists love to cut on those people because they know that fear is there. Like, oh my gosh, I'm active, I'm fit, I'm used to being able to do all this. I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to. So let's get the surgery. I can't tell you how many of those athletes, and I call them athletes because they're very fit and active. Anyone who's training with a goal of, even if it's longevity, is an athlete, they'd come into my clinic and we'd fix them up, no problem, with some regenerative injections, non-steroidal, no medication. I'm talking using their own substances from their body, or maybe some sugar water and some exosomes, and getting them all cleaned up, no problem. All kinds of joints. Regeneration is possible. I've done a whole series of podcasts called Orthopedic Medicine is a Scam. I think it's on my podcast page. The whole series is there. You can go listen to all of those, and I take you through each thing. All this to say, don't be so quick to spinal surgery. It's really much more risky and involved than you have been led to believe. They've got you believing, they put pictures in the airline magazines. Well, I don't even think they have any airline magazines anymore, but they used to. And there'd always be some really attractive woman standing on a beach, her whole backside almost nude with like a little bikini bottom, and she's got a tiny little Band-Aid on her back. And she's like, I went to this spinal clinic and had endoscopic spinal surgery. And I'm like, I wish it were that simple. It's really not. And anyone who tells you that it is, like, I can't tell you the amount of colleagues I know who do intradiscal injections of even PRP and stem cells. The rate of infection is real. Like, it's a thing. Really, things can go wrong, and infections happen, and they happen more frequently than we would like to think they do. And the minute that's a sterile region. So fucking with your spine, I'm not a huge fan of. And so keeping it strong, keeping yourself nutritionally fed. If you're not dealing with motor loss, it's just pain, then you have to answer yourself, can I handle the pain? How bad is it? I'm not telling you not to do surgery if you don't need it, but just, I want you to know the real risks, and I want you to know just all of the information so you have informed consent. Because I'm telling you, they will talk you into imaging and surgery faster than you can see straight, and you're in so much pain. I mean, I get it. On Tuesday, if I didn't know what I knew, I would have been like, I need to go to the doctor and I need something, right? I get it. So anyway, I'm losing the light from the day. I don't have any of my cameras on, or my podcast studio lighting, because I really am trying to keep my circadian rhythm dialed for this trip. And I hope this was helpful. And I think I covered everything. I will try to put the appropriate links in for you if I missed anything. Let us know. You can email us at podcast@drtyna.com and let us know what you think of the show. I would love if you guys would go hit up any of your favorite podcast players and rate, review, subscribe. It helps out tremendously. We love Apple Podcasts. My crew does. That really helps rank us and get the word out. We're on Spotify. You can watch the video on Spotify. We're on YouTube. So love y'all. Please show some love back to me. Share this out. I really want this information to get out to people. I hope it wasn't too long-winded. I wanted to give you the whole story because I know so many of you are dealing with this, or you will deal with it. And it can be quite traumatizing and terrifying if you don't know what you're going through. And took me a minute, but once I realized what I was going through, all the fear left, and I was like, I got this. So thank God, truly, thank you to God for answering my prayers and giving me the ability to be pain-free today and get on this trip. And I'm so excited to share with you the podcast when it comes out. I'll let you guys all know. If you're on my email list, I'll let you know. If you're on Instagram following me, I'll let you know. So with that, I will bid you adieu. Thanks for listening to the Dr. Tyna Show. Please be sure to follow me on Instagram at Dr. Tyna, that's DrTyna, and Dr. Tyna 2.0, as well as visit my website at drtyna.com. This is a Resonant Media production, produced by Drake Peterson and mixed by Chris McCone. The theme song is by John the Guilt. As always, you can email the show at podcast@drtyna.com. And if you like this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. See you next week. This podcast is for general informational purposes only. It does not constitute the practices of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. I am a doctor, but I am not your doctor. No doctor-patient relationship is formed. The use of this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content on this podcast is intended not to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.